I am joined by MC Etching, or Nix, or he's got quite a few names. We're going to be doing meeting a new character today, but before we get into that, let me describe what we're doing today. So, Brunches and Dragons started as kind of an experiment. I wanted to develop my improv skills, my magic item creating skills, and what it's turned into is sort of a storytelling exercise. We end up building a lot of lore and background for the world that I'm running 3 campaigns on. It's just kind of a heck of a lot of fun. These can also be used as examples for new GMs on how to create backstory with characters. It can be just as easy as I'm about to show you, as just asking a bunch of questions. You can use them as questions, go ahead and steal them whenever you'd like. So the first half will be us doing some of that backstory development, and then hopefully Gane and I will be able to go on a bit of an adventure today. But I'm not quite sure. I haven't met him. We'll see where we go. Now, Nix and I met at PAX Unplugged. A friend of mine had a little tiny jar, or a little tiny bottle that had this gorgeous etching on it, and it looked like a health potion. I was like, "Where did you get that?" And she was like, "Oh, MC Etching's just wandering around giving these to people." And I was like, "No." So I immediately started looking for him. When I found him, he was really nice and kind. I'd been following him on Twitter for a while, and his work is excellent. I continue to support his work because it is truly wonderful. I've dropped some of your stuff a couple of times, and it hasn't broken, so I've decided you've imbued it with magic. um, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit?
Okay, I'm Nix at MC underscore etching on Twitter. I Captain Positivity, I guess. Everybody seems to have labeled me with that. I do glass etching, a little bit of gaming stuff, and mostly just kind of gush over how awesome people are.
Yeah, that's one of the things I look for on Twitter every morning is whatever your latest tweet is, because it always makes me happy. That's fair. Okay, so let's see. Well, you've created a character for me. Why don't you go ahead and tell me a little bit about this person?
Let's see. I threw him together last minute because I need practice with improv stuff.
Perfect.
So bare bones, a half orc because I've never played a half orc, fighter because I've never done fighter, and the only real kind of information I pre-built into it was they don't want to be a fighter. They would rather just make little potter of ceramic figures. They
Got
just
it.
also actually happen to be good at fighting, but and so they keep getting dragged into things they don't want to be in.
Okay. Now you said ceramic figures. Is there a significance to the figures or the ceramic? Is he from a place that's got particularly fine clay, or did his mom show him how to do it growing up, or anything like that?
Uh, Not from a place that's known for it, but it's more one of those when everybody uh, was when the other kids growing up were like play fighting and stuff like that. They very much found solace in going off by themselves and just building, making little friends that they could do, not fighting things with.
Ah, so instead of using the figurines to direct battles, you and your friends would use the figurines to like tell other kinds of stories, like maybe rescue or festivals or things like that. One moment,
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah, like parties and exploration and
Yeah,
cooperative tales, not combative tales.
got it. Now, How did Gane find out that? And Gane uses he/him pronouns.
Yes.
How did he find out that he was good at fighting?
Um, when uh, he was coming back, one of the smaller kids was getting bullied,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't want to get involved at first,
Mm-hmm.
but like the more it was going on, the more they just less so it was like this is the right thing to do, and more so just like I just want to make this stop in my presence. And so they intervened and just kind of took care of the situation handily and realized, oh, I guess I'm kind of good at this, but I don't want to be.
Okay. Did somebody maybe see him put that fight down and be like, "Oh, you need to be trained. Like you've clearly got some natural ability," and sort of drag you into training of some kind?
Yeah, probably some of the other people in the like, village or town probably oversaw, and it kind of spread like a rumor a little bit because no one had seen him do anything uh, like that, and they were just like, "Geez, did you know?" Like I had no idea, and then I watched off the floor,
Mm-hmm.
and so it probably spread a little bit like a rumor.
Mm-hmm. Would this adult who would it have been an adult who saw it or like another kid?
Probably an adult.
Would that have been like is did he grow up in a village where it's like it takes a village, like everybody's sort of raising the kids, or is this more of a village where like the parents are in charge of the training and teaching and things like that?
Uh, More of the first that it takes a village.
Okay, so would does this sound right? Would it so an adult sees this, maybe the adult is the one that does train the young villagers in how to defend themselves, because you're a village, you got to be able to defend yourselves, and he takes the ones that he or she takes the ones that are particularly good at fighting and trains them up a little bit more. Maybe they go on to be like caravan guards and that, and that's how a little bit of extra money comes back into the village. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
So this person sees this. We'll call her. Uh, oh, good morning, Justice. I actually originally got this idea from Stashmondo. So he's, it's funny that he's watching this. Hi. So let's see. How about we call her Nin? And so she sees this. She, let's say she sort of takes you aside and she's like, "How did you know how to do that?" And maybe like, would you get defensive, or would you be sort of boastful, or
Probably a little more just not so much defensive, but more just like clammed up, just like I don't know.
and they're like, okay. And so I think what Nin would do is let you go and look very thoughtful, and then probably go find your parents and be like, hey. And so what if we also said that this was about the age that the younglings would be put into training, and that's why Nin never saw this before, because you weren't quite the right age. So Nin, unbeknownst to you, goes and talks to your parents, and your parents are like, what even? And they start hearing these things from other people who saw the fight, and they're like, well, just see what he's like in training. So they don't tell you about this. You go into training, and you're really good, and Nin starts challenging you more and more. And do you think that Gane would ever find a joy in the being good at this part and just not be interested in the hurting people part? Or he
I
really
don't
just doesn't like the whole
think
exercise?
I don't think I think it would be just like this is work that I have to just slog through to get to the thing I actually want to do.
Okay, so
Just if I do this for them, they'll leave me alone so I can go do the thing I want to do.
okay, so Gane never actually feels joy in the success of the fighting. It's just a chore for him, to the point where probably your parents and trainers have to be like, okay, you have to go to your training, then you can play with clay. Does that sound about right? So I would imagine that Nin probably has a couple of conversations with you that increase in frustration of like, you're good at this, boy. Like, why don't you want to keep doing this? And do you ever have and do you, are you able to share with her why you're not able to, or is it still not quite? Stop it,
Uh,
silly computer. Sorry.
Probably still not quite.
Okay.
Probably just one of those, just um, unable to express themselves, teenagery kind of mode of like, I
Right.
don't know,
I don't know.
I don't.
Whatever. And so she just gets more and more frustrated because she sees this talent, you're not using it, and I think she probably gets a little polarized to thinking that your clay is stupid, right? And here you've got this talent, you owe it to the village to use it for the good of the village, and you just want to go play with clay. So, what if when you're probably about of an age to do your own thing, there's probably a big fight. Maybe it's with your parents there. Maybe one of your parents takes your side and the other parent takes the other side, takes an inside. And would this be a good reason for you to leave town, or do you want it to be a little more chill than that?
Probably just when I realized that I'm of an age that I can just leave.
Yeah. Okay. So less of a fight, more of a, okay, this is a slow irritation. It's gonna turn into a fight. I'm just gonna leave. So he gets out there before the fight. Now, do you think that Gane would venture out into the world and then realize that he has to support himself somehow, and the only skill set that people find valuable is the fighting? Does that sound right? But so he's traveling the world. He's using these fighting skills. He's learning stuff. But again, it's the kind of thing where he guards the caravans, he guards the inns, he guards the jewelry and all that stuff from people. But he covets and seeks out his time to be able to continue doing this figure building. Does that sound about right?
I think like when he's doing the guarding and whatnot, it's very much a case where some of the other for hire guards are looking for that opportunity to be violent,
Right.
and is very much like,
No, thank you.
I'll be violent if there's an actual call for it. Up
Right.
until that point, I'm gonna stand here and look menacing.
Now, I don't know much about uh, pottery and ceramics, but I get the idea. I have the feeling that it takes the kind of equipment that you can't sort of stick in your pocket. Would this be the kind of I don't want to call it a passion? Would this be the kind of passion that would require him to find a position that's more stationary?
Eventually, I think he's starting right now with just kind of molding clay, and more so the molding clay and getting details, learning details in wet clay, and just kind of letting it air harden. And I think at some point he'll discover like what can be done with like a kiln. But right now it's very much just learning the detailing part in the wet clay.
I'm kind of getting an idea of a story we could jump into. And when we're doing this kind of thing, I jump around a bunch in time. So I like the idea of him starting out with the air drying clay and working on details. Do you think he does the kind of thing where the oh, this is a good question from chat. Does he sketch out a lot of things for his sculpting, or does it just come straight out of his brain into the clay?
Probably straight out of his brain, and one of those things with the wet clay where you can make a detail and just be like nope, and then
Yeah.
try again, and then nope, and try again, and then nope.
Are his figurines like how realistic are his figurines? Do they tend to be like hyper realistic, or are they more the the art route?
uh More uh art kindy, more abstract.
Abstract. That's the word I was looking for.
and
Thank you.
he and he likes to do patterns and markings on them,
Okay.
like adornments, like swirls or wave style patterns and whatnot. Very texture.
Okay. Let's see. Ooh. Just dropped something. Luth says, like a stylized rendering. Okay. All right. So he starts out with that. He starts out traveling. It builds into as he gets older and as he travels, he learns more about kilns. So would he be looking at fire baking? Sorry, I don't know anything about ceramics. Would he be looking at making larger figurines? Is it always figurines? Does he drift into cups or chalices or anything like that?
It always figurines, but I think he starts humanoid, then moves out into animals and whatnot. And it's the more he travels and the more uh, variations of person and animal he sees, the more he tries to incorporate that.
Okay, I like that. I think that's interesting. Can you see a world? Tell me if this makes sense. Let's say we fast forward in time. He's been fighting on caravans. He finally lands a position where he's guarding, let's say, a pretty fine manor. He's one of the top dudes in a manor guard, right? Like a mansion, rich family type. It's a large enough property that there is a kiln, and it's only used by, we'll say, the smith for the manor. It's that kind of place where it's like the manor serves like a large village, less of a city and more of a village type manor. So the smith does any ceramics that are needed, and the cook sometimes comes out and like throws pots and things like that. But I believe, if I remember recalling correctly, I think smithery does a little bit with ceramic-y type stuff. So there is a kiln, and you are allowed to use it when nobody else is using it. Do you think that's where you'd start experimenting? Does this sound right for Gane? Do you think he'd settle down in a place like
Mhm.
that? Okay.
Yeah.
So he would say he's still a young man. Do you think he would have guarded caravans that were sort of like home goods, or do you think he would have guarded caravans? And remember, he's particularly good at this, so he could absolutely be recruited to the jobs where he's guarding like caches of jewels, and or guarding regent's taxes, or a rich man's daughter, that kind of thing. What do you think he'd be guarding?
He would definitely do his absolute most to get on the least likely to be assaulted details.
Okay, so probably more of the home goods type stuff.
Yeah,
Okay.
with the probably occasionally he would find himself in a situation where it's like, I have to go with this one as a high probability of getting being a target, and I'm not happy about it.
I like that. Now, what if, let's say, at some point in his past, he was on. So I kind of had this idea. Let me run it by you. I like the idea of playing with. At some point in Gaines' past, he was guarding something that did get attacked by some sort of monster-like creature, and it was a horrible night. You didn't lose anybody, but you lost the cargo, and the creature had this odd symbol, and all you remember were its hideously glowing eyes and this symbol. And then you try to put it out of your mind, and then years later, or like a year or two later, that symbol and that shape keeps cropping up in the work you're doing. And then what I was thinking about doing is for our story is exploring why that keeps cropping up in your shape, or in your work, and have it affect the manor in some way, where you actually end up calling this monster to the manor. And
Hmm.
and then I think it would be interesting if we try to find a way for Gane to use the ceramic type work he's doing to to stop whatever's happening with this monster, rather than try and kill it. So we can have some fun interactions where the Lord of the Manor's like, kill it, and you're like, we're not. We can have some fun interactions where, you're crafting this thing, and the smith comes up behind you and he's like, what you making? And you're like, I don't know. And then in the night there's these weird howls that you remember, and somebody's like, what is that? And you're like, I actually know what that is. So we could have some fun interactions around that. Does that sound like a direction you want to go in?
Yeah.
You want to tweak anything about that? Because we can jump in there anywhere. Did you have a different idea for a story we could tell? Want to?
No, that sounds great.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're playing in the space that you're interested in. No use telling a story that you're. Oh, uh, I'm. I I need to. Nope, never mind. Luke's gonna take care of it. Sorry, one of my cats just knocked something over. and
Uh,
we need to. We have a very complicated quarantine system, and every now and then they're like, new thing, and then they touch it, and we're like, you're not supposed to touch the new thing. But I touch. Hi, I'll save you. Yes, Papa's mad. This is Dr. Aegon. He's
aw.
he's about 5 months old now, which means he's convinced that he must get involved in everything as quickly as possible. Yeah, see, Papa still loves you even though you're annoying. Yeah, Mama wants to tell a story, okay? Do you want to hang out here or do you want to go mess up something else? We're going to hang out here for a second. All right. Okay, so I think that's a good direction to go into. So let's go ahead and use the level 3 sheet. And let me just switch to that really quickly. And we'll say Gane's been here for, I don't know, what, a year? Does that sound like a good enough long time to establish these connections and be sort of a trusted guard?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll call this family the Venn family. They're local country lords. Which means that Lord Venn gets in the fields with his workers, is involved in all the harvest festivals, occasionally goes into town to do, voting and that kind of thing, but always brings back, like he's a very good lord to have. His tenants on the land around him all think he's great. He's stern, but they trust him to make fair judgments because, let's say, this is also the part of the world where the local lords tend to make the judgments. Luth, you're fired. How much do the Venn family members rely on diagrams? Yeah, you're super fired. So this is a good
Yeah.
family to work for. They tend to not pry too much into details. Gaines had some employers in the past who want to know where he's from and how did he learn to fight like this. And Lord Venn just sort of takes you at face value, right? Does that sound about right? Okay. If at any point my ramblings you're like, no, I want it to be different, jump in. Please jump in. So you've been here for about a year. I think the two people you would know the best, besides the captain of the guard, which is not you. Would Gane try to be the captain of the guard? Do you think he'd find himself in a position where he is the captain of the guard? No, he's here to get paid and that's it.
Yeah, well, I think it would be one of those things where he would be somebody that's sought after for his skills, so he's more likely to be volunteered by the captain for the stuff, but would actively not
try to take on too much. Okay, so he knows the captain of the guard. The captain of the guard is another one who doesn't try to pry. I think this is also probably a place where you don't get teased for the ceramic stuff you're doing. Nobody really does too much wondering about it. Everybody sort of keeps themselves in a friendly way. Like if you want to join in, you join in, and if you don't, they sort of leave you be. Does that sound about right? I want the conflict to be from outside, not necessarily inside. But if you want somebody to start a rivalry inside the manor, let me know. I think probably the smith is. I think he's a deceptively soft-looking human. Like if he was walking by in the street, you wouldn't say, "Oh, that's the smith," because he's got huge muscles. Like I think he's sort of the opposite. He's sort of a skinny dude who it's hard to tell how old he is because he's got a gray hair, gray beard, but he's got sort of a round baby face. And he's pretty good at what he does. He's not amazing, right? Like he works in a country manor for a reason, but he keeps everybody stocked and he keeps the town going with axles or whatever, wheels and things. I think the cook is, let's see. What do I want to do with the cook? What do you think? Do we want sort of a shrill taskmaster, or do we want sort of a shy, diffident sort of cook, or super cheerful and bubbly? What do you think?
I don't know, maybe kind of like somebody very paternally concerned about everybody, and the kind of person that would just kind of like, you know, as you're walking by, just kind of like sneaky a snack when nobody's looking.
Always trying to feed people. Yeah. Okay. Great. I
Hmm.
think yeah, and yeah, I think he and the Smith are probably pretty good friends too. So that so what he comes out to do is ceramic-y type stuff. The Smith and he get to talking. So that's kind of how you know the cook. I think. I think the cook has probably asked you a couple of times if you would mind making something a little fancier than a bowl. Do you think you would try your hand at that, or be like, no, I make puppies and chickens?
I think for them, I would try.
Okay. Um, and how well do you think that would turn out? We thinking like a just a basic bowl and it just has cleaner edges than the cook makes, or would you try your hand at putting some of the
I think I would put a little bit of a flourish on it. I think more of them that I made, like my flourishes would get more and more detailed,
Mm-hmm. Okay, I like that.
just as I kind of like, oh well, this isn't that bad.
Do you try anything with paint, or you just work with the local materials you have?
Just with the local materials.
Would you work with I know nothing about ceramics, but would you work with mixing in different kinds of clay so they're different colors, or just straight reddish or grayish clay?
I would probably try to find some way to vary colors a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I like that. Okay, so let's say um, we'll leave the encounter you had fairly vague. It was more than a year ago before you came here. It was one of the last jobs you did traveling. Maybe it's one of the reasons you decided to settle down somewhere. The less you travel, the more you're going to encounter these kinds of critters, was the thinking. And yeah, let's say it's been about a year and a half. You it was nowhere near here, as you traveled quite a ways to get and are quite far away. There's no one here that was in the caravan. There's nothing here should remind you of that. But let's say that Gane starts having dreams about that night again, and let's
Hmm.
say, do you want them to be dreams where it's replaying a memory, or do you want it to be a dream where it's snapshots of the memory and it's as if Gane himself is explaining to somebody else what happened in the dream, or do you want it to be Gane is sort of watching it happen to himself? Like, what kind of dream are we looking at here?
Probably one of those ones where it's replaying the memory,
Yep.
but just like mildly distorted.
Mm-hmm. Is it distorted in a
You
positive or a negative route? Is it scarier or less scary?
just everything just not really scary or less, but more like everything just seems a little out of focusy kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's not a lot of detail to anything except for like the defining things of event, like the creature's eyes or whatever is going to be a big focus of it. Like that's the thing that's clear. Everything else is just kind of hazy.
Yeah, let me see if I can pull up anything interesting with the Googles. this? Yeah, that looks terrifying. Perfect. I looked up D&D 5e monster with glowing eyes, and I found something called a Nothic.
Ooh.
Yes, that looks horrible. And it's an aberration, so that could be neat with symbols. It almost seems to be able to see into your soul. Yes, this thing is absolutely terrifying looking. It's got one huge eye in the center of its face, and underneath, the only other characteristics, like the nostrils look like slits, and then it's got this huge jaw, and then it's got huge back legs and just spikes coming off its back, like sharp spikes, and then its front claws have its arms have four sharp claws off it, and it sort of hunches over, so when it's at rest, it's sort of squatting with its front claws down and tucked in front of it. It's quite frightening looking. I wouldn't want to face this thing. That's for sure. Let's say you ran up against one of those. How's that?
Sure.
What's its challenge rating? 2. Yeah, that sounds about right. Okay. So you ran up against a Nothic. Let's say he doesn't know what it was. Sorry, puppy is snarling at stuff. All right, so he's having these dreams. He remembers the eye very specifically. Let's say he also remembers this feeling that the creature in front of you knew all of your secrets, could see to the very depths of your soul, which is a terrifying thing for anybody. Yeah, do you think he would tell anybody about it?
Probably not in detail, or maybe like the dreams, or just talk about the
Either.
encounter in general.
Either. I mean, he probably sleeps in barracks with the other guards. Do you think he would wake up from these dreams sort of like screaming, or like falls out of bed, or just his eyes just snap open? Like, would anybody notice him having these dreams?
Probably not notice. Probably just eyes snap open, maybe breathing a little raggedly.
Okay.
If if somebody were specifically paying attention, they might catch it.
Right. Okay. Um, if you need to take a break, just let me know. I'm just thinking.
I know we're good.
Okay, so no one notices in the barracks, but he gets up, goes to the kitchen for breakfast. The cook immediately tries to slide. I'm thinking these little like meat pockets with bacon and cheese in them, and he just has those
Mm-hmm.
sort of lying around, like they're always around. He just slides a couple of those to you while he gets the rest of breakfast ready. Do you think you'd gossip at all? I think you're probably in the kitchen before most of the other guards come in for their. You probably come into the kitchen to be a little more solitary, because it's one of those places where there's just so many things going on that you could sit quietly in a corner, and it's actually sort of as alone as you can get in a place like this. Does that sound right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you try to tell the cook what was going on or anything?
Probably not. Probably just try and just eat in peace
Okay.
and plot out the day in one of those very like, okay, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this, and then I'm done.
Okay. So you've probably got a shift, and then once the shift is done, and I don't really want to focus on that because that's not where your passion is for Gane. So let's say he gets through his shift, he's done, he's got the rest of the evening free. Do you think he's been working on a project that it just isn't quite right, or is he just starting a new project?
He's probably what he's been doing is been one long continuous project that he's just basically like building a diorama of a sorts
Mm-hmm.
of just like the places he's been and the things he's seen. Like, here's a giraffe, here's a hippopotamus, here's a insert fantasy creature, and just slowly going through and trying to remember the
Fantasy
details and
hippopotamus.
try to get him as right as possible, and then just try and build up his little menagerie that he's got probably going on a shelf
Mm-hmm.
uh, somewhere, maybe in the barracks, but that's just like his little corner that he said, like, look, this is my space.
Well, I think everybody would have their own little space, yeah. Okay, so you've got the menagerie there. So, do you think you'd work on the clay in the smithy where the kiln is, or back in the barracks?
I would probably have a spot near the smithy. I could just go to and work quietly. Then, if I needed to, just hop in to use the kiln or this, or like you could grab a tool, sharpen a thing, and then come back out to my little space. Once so I wasn't in the way,
Mm-hmm. Let's say
and
it's the wood pile.
also,
Say it's the
yeah,
wood pile at back, because that's going to be covered. Go through a lot of wood and coal for the kiln. It's also where the smith takes a break. So let's drop into a scene really quick. We'll do a quick scene and then we'll take a real life break. So let's say the smith comes out and he smokes these really sweet smelling tiny, they're like cigars, but because they're brown and they've got that same sort of heavy perfume kind of taste to them. But instead of being that nasty cigar smell, it's like a sweet leaf almost. He comes out and he's always very respectful. He doesn't blow the smoke over on you or anything, and it's drizzling, so he's kind of under the overhang, and he's letting the smoke go out. And when he comes out here to take these breaks, I don't think he bothers you. I think he just sort of keeps to himself, but he looks over at what you're working on. So let's say you're working on a new figurine, and let's say that the figurine is turning into this Nothic. And
okay.
are you the kind of artist that just sort of like lets it happen and then looks at it when it's done, or you're seeing it forming and you're trying to? That's not what you're trying to make, and it just keeps turning more into the Nothic.
Probably that. Probably I keep getting frustrated, like visually frustrated, and like it'll start to take shape like that, and I'll stop, and I'll, just get visually flustered and just kind of like mash it back down and start again, and then just kind of end up almost in the same exact place, and just get frustrated with my own hands to the point where I'm like, ah.
I think the Smith sees this and sees one of these times where you're frustrated and mashing it down, and I think he's standing there and he's got the the cigar, and he says, um, what you making there?
I'm attempting to make a creature that I saw a few years ago, but it's not. It's just not.
And he says, I don't think I've ever seen a creature like that. Where did you say you saw it?
Well, the thing I'm attempting to make, I saw a few years back, but it just keeps twisting as I do it.
Oh, so you're trying to make something else, but it keeps turning into this other thing? Is that it?
Yes,
This
it's very frustrating.
Smith goes quiet. A couple more puffs, and he turns to you again and he says, You know, when my workins do that, I find that it's best to just see it through. You ever tried that?
No, I try to get it exactly as I remember it.
And he says, Well, sometimes your brain's trying to tell you one thing when you're trying to focus on another. And if you can get that first thing out of the way, then you can focus on what you'd like to think about. So why don't you just let it happen?
Yeah, and he'll see him get like a little sully about it. But that's not what I want to do. I'm tired of people telling me to do the things I don't want to do. But then kind of accept it.
Smith sort of raises an eyebrow and he says, "Well, that's kind of the world we live in, isn't it now?"
Uh,
And the
and he'll just
go ahead.
yeah, just say he'll just kind of look on his face of like, fine, I'm doing the thing.
I think the Smith would actually hang out as he realizes you're just gonna do the thing, and he watches. He brings out a second one of those little cigars and sorry, the cat just climbed into another box. He pulls out another one of those and he says, "Do you mind if I watch?"
And I just kind of like I give it like an affirmative.
So he watches. And in the end, you make a perfect representation of this creature. You know, the big eye, the gaping jaws, the vicious claws on back feet and front claws, the arched back, the super sharp spikes coming out of its back all over the place.
And I'll just kind of stop. Say, do I, from the incident I had, when I had the incident, I probably didn't see the creature fully.
Mm-hmm.
So I probably don't it doesn't really register. And so I'm just kind of confused. I'm like, and I just show it to him like, have you ever seen anything like this?
The Smith looks at it and he says, "No, but I haven't traveled much. Was born and raised in this very village. You know, the cook's been all over. You might try him."
And I'll just kind of put my tools away in the little one of those little roll-up artisan carries, and just kind of, just kind of walk to go see the cook, but very much looking at that look on my face of like, why do I know this? I know that I know this. I know that I should recognize, be able to go, yeah, that's like, there's that recognition back there, but like I can't
Yeah, I find it interesting.
bring it to the front.
I like the idea of him knowing about the eyes, maybe knowing about the claws, but not having seen it fully. So he shouldn't be able to make this creature, but he can. Like, what is that about? Like, I find that very fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he goes to the cook. The cook is, it's a quiet period, and the cook's just making more of those little meat pockets. And he's humming badly. And you come in. And he sees you out of the corner of his eye, and he says, "Hungry again? These will be done in just a jiff."
No, that'll help, but have you ever seen one of these? And I just kind of, do you know what this is? And hold the little figurine up.
He squints his eyes. He's a little nearsighted. He gets closer, and as soon as he realizes what it is, he takes his hands and he covers it, and he says, "Where did you get this?"
I made it. I was trying to make something else, but
Where
my hands wouldn't let me.
have you seen this in real life? You make things from real life, don't you? Where did you see this?
Bits of it feel vaguely familiar, but
And the cook says, "Try, son. Where did you see? Was it around here? Was it recently?" And he's very urgent.
no, as no, not around here, not recently. It was when I was traveling, guarding caravans, that there's a few times we'd been set upon by creatures. There's one incident. It's very foggy. I have dreams of it sometimes. All I remember is just glowing in the dark, and just that feeling of I'm doomed.
The cook is nodding and he says, "Set it down, set it down." And he pulls out a handkerchief and he sort of runs the edges of his fingers along. He runs the edges of the handkerchief through his fingers until he gets all the way around it, and then he sets the handkerchief on top of it. And he leans back and he pulls out another handkerchief. He's always got a million of them. And he wipes his face and you realize he's sweating quite badly. And he looks scared. And he says, "Gane, my boy, you say you've been dreaming about this?"
In fits and starts, nothing I can keep a hold of in my mind.
"And this is new, you say? The dreams?"
Fairly recently, yes.
"You got more of that clay on you?"
Some, and I have there's a little wet pack that I keep with me.
And he says, "Make me something else. Make a horse or something. Go, do it." And I want to watch.
I'll set about trying to make a horse.
I think it turns into another one of these. Does that sound all right?
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as it starts to turn into that, he reaches forward and closes your hands on it so that it messes up, like it squishes it. And he says, "It's coming." And he looks absolutely terrified. And he takes his hands away. And he says, "I'm sorry." And he's just sort of staring up at the ceiling, and he just looks terrified. What do you do?
What's coming? What does this mean?
And the cook, he looks at you and he starts to say something, and then he stops, and he's got one hand up by his chin, and he's sort of like tapping his chin with a fist, and he turns again and he starts to say something, and he says, and he stops and he sort of dithers back. You've never seen this before. He's a very confident man. And some of his workers start to come back in. It's about time for the dinner shift, and the cook says, "We can't talk about this here." And he sort of scoops up the figurine you made, the figurine you made, in the handkerchief and ties the handkerchief closed, and he says, "Don't unwrap this. Come to me after dinner. We have to speak to my lord. Now go." And he scoots you out of the kitchen.
And I'll take it and leave.
Okay, do you do anything between now and after dinner? Do you go eat dinner? Do you go sit in a corner and brood? Do you go talk to the smith? Do you try to make 8 more figurines and they all turn into nothings? What do you try to do?
I'll probably, after seeing how just badly that rustled him, I won't try to make any more.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just keep the one in the handkerchief with me,
mm-hmm.
so I know where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just grab some dinner and just eat by myself quickly so I can get through that, just to go talk to him again.
Okay. So let's say you're at the door of the kitchen as they're wrapping up the dinner, and the cook sees you, and he goes from his usual sort of the paternally self, and he gets very thin-lipped and sort of white in the face, and he urges his kitchen helpers out before they're even done. And holiday, I'll clean up the rest. Go. He gets them all out of there, and he says, "Okay, my lord." He turns to you and he ushers you in, and he slides you a thing of pear cider. And he says, "This is from my special batch." Now, he makes pear cider and everybody drinks it and it's fine, but he also has a batch that he triple distills, and so it's almost like a pear liqueur. And he slides you a whole pint of it. And he's like, "Drink that slow now, but You're gonna want some of that. And he has one of his own. He swigs like half of it. Seems to steady him. And he says, we're just waiting for my lord. And you guys have a tense couple of minutes, say maybe 10, 15 minutes. And every time the fire pops in the hearth behind you, the cook jumps and suddenly my lord appears in the doorway. And he says, what's this all about? And the cook pops up and he rushes over and escorts the lord to the table. And all of a sudden you're sitting at a table with Lord Ben. And he looks at you curiously, and the cook says, "I'll explain, my lord. I'll explain." Gane, did you bring the figurine with you?
And I'll pull it out and just kind of.
No, don't unwrap it.
Do you want me to hand it to you?
Yeah, just set it right here. Yeah, don't unwrap it. And he looks at Lord Ben. Lord Ben's looking very curious at this point. He doesn't look frustrated or anything. And the cook turns to him and he says, "My lord, we have traveled together for years, and you know that I serve you." And the Ben says, "Yeah, I know. Just drop this. What's going on?" And the cook wipes his brow and he's sweating again, and he says, "Ven, I've seen this before." And Ven reaches for the handkerchief, and the cook says, "No, don't. It's called a nothik. And when you've seen one and you haven't killed it, it will track you through the years if you've wronged it in any way, because it sees into your soul." And Ven leans back and he looks at the cook and he looks at you, Gane, and he says, "Have you seen one of these?"
I vaguely remember.
What do you remember?
I remember we were protecting a caravan. It was dark, and we were beset by something.
Okay. And did you kill it, or did you get away?
It stopped. Most everyone was dead, and it stopped.
What was it coming after? Did it try to come after you?
Oh, it just killed the majority of the caravan, didn't take anything. It just seemed interested in slaughter.
And Ven looks at the cook and he says, "That's a bit unusual." And the cook says, "Yes, usually they're after something. They serve creatures usually. They're not usually running around, like that." And the Ven says, "And you didn't kill it. You're sure about that, Gane? You didn't kill it?"
Not that I know of. It's all very hazy.
And Ven looks concerned and he says, "Well, and I assume you're having dreams about it again?"
Bits and pieces wake me in the night with a start. Nothing, no tangible memory that I can hold on to or describe, just vagaries.
And the cook looks at Ven like urgently and is like, "See?" And Ven says, "Well, that could be nothing." And the cook says, "It's not nothing. Look." And he takes the handkerchief very gently and he undoes it and holds it out to Ven, and Ven recoils. And he says, "Where did you get that, Gane?"
I was trying to craft something, an animal for my menagerie. My hands would not do other than this.
And the cook says, "I had him try to make something in front of me and he could only make this. The cook turns to you and he says, "You didn't even get a good look at it when this all happened, did you?"
Not that I can recall.
And the cook turns to Ven and says, "There's no way the boy would be able to make something this detailed, not having seen it, if it wasn't coming." And Ven says, "You're right. You're right, but we need to know what its controlling symbol is." And the cook looks blankly at him and he says, "What?" And Ven says, "These kinds of things they're aberrations. They're called forth with symbols. We can send them back the same way. If it's on this plane, somebody called it, and it's probably been called for another task, and it either finished that one, is coming after Gane here, or it ignored it, whoever called it, Regardless, we have to figure out what its symbol is. And he turns to you and he says, Gane, do you remember a symbol? Anything, any sort of symbol.
I remember glowing, its huge eye, and just something. It might have been a symbol. It's just so vague.
And Ven looks very concerned and he says, we have to get that symbol. And he said, and they both look, the cook is sort of wringing his hands, and Ven's, sort of looking stoically at the flames in the hearth, and he says, we'll need to discuss this more, but not tonight. And he turns to you, Gane, and he says, if you have clear dreams, if they get more clear, you come to me at once. I'll leave word with your captain. It's very important, Gane. The clearer your dreams are, the closer it is. And if you recall a symbol, any symbol, you come to me at once. And if I'm not available, you come to cook here. Do you understand? It's very important. I have to
I,
protect my town.
I, I understand.
And he looks satisfied with that. He trusts his men, and he looks at the cook and he says, thank you for bringing this to me. I must go. And he turns around. So we're going to leave the scene there. Let's actually take a quick break. I have to go figure out what my dog keeps barking at. She's all curled up on the couch back there, pouting. So I got to figure that out. So how about 10 minutes? Does that sound all right, Nix?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Let me just line up my be right back screen because it's got Dungeons and Dragons on it. All right. Stream. We'll be right back in about 10 minutes. So that'll be 40 minutes after the hour, and we'll be back and we'll see what happens with this Nothic and with Gane. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back. Mute microphone. Hello, Stream. We're back. Hope everybody had a nice break. Let's see. Where did we leave this? The Lord Ven told you to tell him the second you have more dreams, and that he'd talk to you about it later. Does that sound about right?
Yep.
All right. So I think the big thing is going to be finding that symbol. I'm definitely making stuff up here. All I did was look up Nothic for the picture, but I'm making up the fact that they need to be called here and banished with symbols, purely based on the whole aberration thing. And so I think what the cook does is he'll follow you back to. So the Lord walks away, and the cook will turn to you and say, "We need to go talk to the smith. Come with me." And do you go with him, or are you like, "No, old man, hate you"?
Oh yeah.
So you head back to the smith. The smith is actually still working. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say I definitely go with.
Yeah, so the smith actually doesn't work in the middle of the day because it's too hot, so he's working in the cool evening after dinner. He puts aside like a horseshoe or whatever, and he wipes his hands and he says, "Well, did you know what it was?" And the cook says, "Yes, I know what it was, and we're going to need your help. We've got to figure this out. And we're going to need a symbol, and we're going to need it made up in a way that can't be destroyed, which usually means metal." And the smith is like, "Well, tell me what's going on here." And the cook gives him the lowdown, the rundown. You know, it's a Nothic. It's, it seems to be following Gane. It's going to come here, and it'll wreak havoc. The Lord Ven thinks that there's a symbol calling it here, and we can use that to get rid of it. But we need a way to contain it when it gets here, and a way to banish it. But it has to be something that the Nothic can't destroy. And the smith says, which is like his response to everything. And, sorry, there's a box over there that the kittens keep, like, falling into and then chasing each other into, and occasionally they'll cry like they can't get out, which is nonsense because they can absolutely get out on their own. And so the smith says, and he keeps puttering around the shop, and he says, "A symbol. Do we know what the symbol is?" The cook looks at you.
I have no idea yet.
And the smith says, "Well, that's problematic. How does this work? Do we just draw the symbol in the dirt and then it's gone?" And the cook says, I don't know. I don't know enough about this. I'm just a cook." And the smith says, "Well, where can we get more information?" And the cook is just at a loss. And the smith says, "Well, Lady Ven is well educated. Perhaps she'll be able to help." And the cook looks relieved, and he says, "Of course, that's why Lord Ven wanted to talk about this later. He's going to want to talk to his lady. That makes perfect sense. All right. So all we have to do is figure out the symbol." And they both turn to you, and they're like, "Yeah, so just figure out the symbol." So this is more stuff that you just have to do.
So I guess I'll just kind of, I don't know, just kind of sit down and just kind of relax myself, and I'll pick up a stick or a piece of metal or whatever's handy, and I'll just kind of stick it in the dirt, feet, and just kind of relax and just let my hand just do a thing with my eyes closed. I'm like, this is I'm comes to me when I'm sleeping, so maybe if I just, and my hands seem to act on their own.
Right.
Maybe if I just let go,
Yeah.
something will come through, and I'll just kind of let my hand and arm do whatever.
Roll me a straight d20. We'll see what the dice say.
With an 18.
All right. Well then, I think you do draw a symbol in the dirt. and it's very clear actually. What felt to you like just squiggles, it's a very clear symbol in a circle. And the cook sucks in a breath and says, "That's I've seen that before. That seems like, and with a circle in there like that. That's a contained symbol." And he and the smith start talking back and forth about how, the circle is what it like it's both a calling and a sealing, symbols combined like that in a circle are sort of like as close as you can get to a spell, and they've never seen that particular one before, and they start talking about like using carving it into rock and having it, luring it across, a trap like that. Like they start talking about all these things, but it's pretty late. The Lord Ven wants to talk to you the following morning, so it's probably best to go to sleep. Do you have anything you want to do before taking a long rest?
I'll probably want to make sure, just out of habit, that my raw clay is wetted and covered and stowed before I trudge off to the barracks to go to sleep.
Okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Go ahead and roll me another straight d20. We'll see if you dream this evening.
Is a 3.
So I'll say that you don't have any dreams that you recall the following morning. You go to the kitchen. The cook's there. He looks at you anxiously, because you get there before everybody else, and he says, "The Lord and Lady are waiting for you in their chambers. Here, take this." And he hands you a tray, and it's got like tea and the inevitable meat pockets, and take this. This'll give you an excuse. Go. And if anybody stops you, say the lady's not feeling well and she requested this. And you were just in the kitchen. Just go. Keep it quiet now.
And I'll take the tray and head off.
So you head up to their chambers. You've probably never been here before. No need. But sorry, yawning. You knock on the door. Ven opens it. He pulls you in. You're in a small sort of receiving room. So there's these little chairs and whatnot, and he takes the tray and he sets it on a table, and he has you sit, and he says, I spoke with my wife, and she has some interesting things to tell us, but you'll need to answer some questions. Did you bring that figurine with you?
Yes.
And the lady turns to you, and both her and the Lord don't like dress fancy unless there's a need for it. So she's dressed plainly, but it's the material of her dress is just a little finer than what you'd see on like a serving lady. It's pretty much that, and she doesn't look as weathered, right? Like she works hard, but she doesn't work in the fields or in the kitchens or anything like that. She's a bit of a scholar, which is unusual in this part of the world. And she says, she holds out her hands. "May I see it?"
And I'll hand it over, still inside the handkerchief. I'll hand it.
And she looks at the handkerchief, and she's sort of touching the edges, and she says, "Is this your handiwork, the handkerchief?"
Handkerchief, no.
And she says, And she unwraps it, and she looks at the figurine, and she doesn't touch it. She sort of like moves the handkerchief so she can see all the angles. She sets it on the table. She sort of wraps the edges of the handkerchief back over it, and she says, "This is quite fine work. My husband tells me that you didn't see it clearly. This is just what your hands did?"
They just would not do otherwise until completed.
She says, "I understand. I do understand. Now, I want you to sit back in the chair, and the tea I requested is actually for you. I know a little bit about herb lore. This will relax you. I'm going to ask you some questions to try and pull out some details of the encounter you had so that we know how to fight it. My husband tells me that you remembered the symbol. The cook told him last night. You remembered what the symbol looks like?
Do.
I want you to hold that symbol in your mind as you drink this cup of tea very slowly. So she has you drink a cup of tea, and she's like, I'll drink one with you. And she drinks. This isn't a particularly untrusting part of the world, but it's. We'll say that this is a politeness, like a manners thing. If for you to be able to drink tea in when we'll say it's not even for a servant to drink tea in front of the master, that the master has to be drinking or anything like that. I think it's more of a, in this part of the world, if everybody drinks tea, like it's just a polite thing. And so the lord and the lady take tea, and everybody's quiet. They're pretty small cups, so you get through it pretty fast. And she says, okay, now lean back in the chair, get comfortable, make sure you're comfortable, hold that symbol in your mind. And she says, now I want you to think back to that encounter or to your most recent dream. Now I want you to concentrate on that symbol, sort of push that to the side while you're thinking about the encounter. I specifically want you to try and remember what color was the creature's eyes. So keep that in mind. She then starts describing a very generic night scenario, because this happened at night. She starts describing, like, you hear the wind rustle through the trees, your feet are firm on the earth, you're deep into your watch and your eyes are tired and gritty. She starts describing like generalities like that, and it's helping. You're starting to remember that night in a little more detail. Your mind fills in a scent that she doesn't call out because she doesn't know quite where you were. She's just doing generalities, and all of a sudden, you remember what the color is of the eyes. What color is that?
Like a sickly bright green, tinging on yellowish.
And she says, you hear her murmur, excellent. Now, it's the spikes on its back. Do you remember their placement and their shape? And then she starts to murmur more generalities, and until you recall what the spikes look like. Were they were they like porcupine, where they're just, the same shape, the same size at the base to the top, or do they start thick and narrow to a point? Are they more like fins that are sharp, or are they like needle sharp at the end? Were there 7 of them? Were there hundreds? She asks you to describe the pins.
There was many tiny ones, but a handful of larger ones that almost look like broken bone jutting through the skin.
And you hear her murmur, excellent, again. And then she says, now finally, I need to know what color its skin was. So she goes right back into describing the scene in generalities. And she wants to know what kind of skin, what color skin was it? Was it a mottled gray? Was it the same color as the stone behind it? Was it a bright pink, sort of a sickly bright pink? Was it the same green as its eyes? Like, what color was its skin?
I remember gray with underlying bits of almost like a raw flesh tone.
And she murmurs, excellent. And she stops talking to you, and she says, you can open your eyes now. And she's walking around the room. And this room actually has quite a few bookshelves in it. So she's walking over, and she's running her finger along, and she's murmuring to herself, and the Lord just watches her. Like this seems like a fairly commonplace thing for them. She pulls down 2 books and she comes back over, and she says, "All right, that's enough details. We should be able to figure out exactly what kind of Nothic we're looking at, and one of these books should have how we should be able to fight it off, or if we can fight it off." And the Lord looks kind of anxious, and she starts flipping through the book, and she says, "It helps me think if you gentlemen could talk while I'm looking this up." So the Lord sort of like gives you a bemused smile, like, "Well, let's put up with her," like it's as she works, and he says, "Well, tell me a little bit about yourself. I know that you're a damn good fighter for me, and I know you make these little figurines. What other figurines have you made?"
Just many peoples and animals I've met in my travels.
That's a fine subject matter, and you've traveled quite a bit, I hear.
I went where the work sent me.
And the Lord looks wistful, and he says, "I traveled quite a bit in my youth. Cook was part of the my retinue, as my father would say. I got called back home here when my father died, of course, to take over the lands, and I do miss it. Met my lovely wife here, traveling, and she flashes a smile as she keeps looking. She's making notes and she's flipping through the pages. And he says, "Gane, are you from near here, or from farther away?"
Farther away, just a small village.
Of course. And how does such an excellent fighter such as yourself find himself working with clay?
Because I actually don't like to fight. I just accidentally happen to be good at it.
He looks he sort of like looks a little taken aback, and he says, "Well, I'll be darned. I don't think I've ever met anybody who is a fighter as fine as you that didn't like to fight." And it looks like he's sort of adjusting his brain, and he says, "What do you like to do?"
I like to work with my clay. That's really all I've ever wanted to do.
And the Lord looks very interested. He's like, "Really? How did you discover this talent? Because it's quite a talent, son. I look at this."
As a child, I found when the other children were play fighting, I much preferred spending my time away, and one day, out of sheer boredom, I just happened to start playing in some clay, and I decided to make a friend. And the more I did this, the more I found that I was able to give more and more detail. The more I thought about it, the more effort I put into it. They became finely detailed, and I was able to just recreate things that I had seen.
And he says, "That's fascinating. And your village, did they appreciate this, or is that why you left?"
They appreciated when they found out that I was handy with a blade.
Ah, yes, that is the way of the world. I myself was only really valued by my father because I was to inherit. And he sort of looks at you ruefully, and he says, "Not quite the same thing, of course. You having to make your living by the blade, and me having to inherit. Ha ha." And he seems to be sort of self-deprecating. And he at this point, I think the lady will say, "Ha! I think I've got it." She sort of waves her hands, and she's got a piece of paper in one of them. She goes, "I think I've got it. I think." And she says, "Now, the Nothics, there are quite a few different breeds, and I say breeds very specifically because some of the aberrations that are a little more intelligent will use these to do their bidding. Now, they come from different regions." She chatters away for a while, And she says, now the one that you've got is actually from a rather rare breed that does a lot of tracking. And that's what that glow is from its eyes. She says, now they're all quite lethal, of course, and they're all able to sort of, well, she sort of looks at you and she says, it's tough to put into words, but some of the accounts I've read is like they can sort of see into your soul. Does that sound like the experience you've had?
A bit, yes.
And she says, yes, so they're all quite like that, but this particular kind, and she holds up a book, and in the book there's a sketch of what you see, and as soon as you see it, there's sort of a shock runs through you, and that's exactly what it is, and all of your memories sort of snap into place. And now when you think about that time, that's the exact creature you see. It's exactly what you were thinking of, or what you encountered. And she says, this one here has a particularly large eye, and is able to track people, from what I'm reading here, just by their souls. Because when it feels like they're looking into your soul, they actually are, in a way. So they're able to track you from that. And once they get your scent, they have it forever. They're quite vicious. They're used as sort of assassins for these aberrations. The caravan you must have been guarding must have had somebody in the party that was that they were sent after. So that's and of course you getting so the aberration would have probably been sent to destroy that one person, and it might not have been even the thing you were guarding. It might have just been somebody that the aberration felt wronged them, or perhaps this aberration has a way of seeing into the future and saw that this particular person or their progeny would harm them in the future, because of course aberrations are quite long lived. And she's very scholarly about this. She's definitely sort of like talking a bunch, and the husband is looking on indulgently, and she says, and of what I'm guessing is happened is this Nothic destroyed what it was supposed to, but then the aberration at some point later it sent this after you, probably everybody in the caravan that had anything to do with it, to sort of, maybe they saw that they would need to protect themselves at some point in the future, which is why it's after you. And she said, unfortunately, what it will do once it finds you is then go after anybody that's ever interacted with you. So of course that means everybody here in the town and anywhere you've met over your travels. The only good news I have for you is it will start with you. And she
That's
really,
the worst good news I've ever heard.
yeah, she goes, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. That does sound dreadful, doesn't it? Even better good news. You aren't able to kill these. And she genuinely seems like this is good news. And her husband says, darling, that's not good news.
You and I have different definitions of good news.
And she looks flustered again, and she says, I'm sorry. What that means is we're able to banish it, and that's a little more final than killing when it comes to aberrations. That's what I meant, of course. My apologies. What we'll need, of course, is that symbol that you remember. Because when the aberration touches your soul, what it does is it leaves an imprint, and that's why you're hearing these echoes through dreams, and you're hearing these, and you're able to craft this fine figurine here, as it's left an impression on you. That impression will go away once you've banished it, and I imagine the dreams started again, and this figurine making started again when it came to this plane. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And she says, okay, so what we'll need to do is we'll need to craft it. Now, because it's focused on you, it will need to be something that you can do. Now, you're quite good at fighting, so perhaps this is the kind of thing where you can combat it with fighting, even though you wouldn't be able to kill it. Does that sound right?
Possibly.
And she says, is there anything else that you're good at? Is there any other passion you have? Often our passions can align with what our real powers are. Not everybody has, magic powers or anything like that. But even a simple baker like our cook, his power is in the goodness he bakes into his food. Do you have something like that?
Well, I have my ceramic work, my clay work.
And she says, of course, I did not want to assume, but do you feel that is a core uh, words are hard. She says, do you see that as core to your being, to who you are?
It's the only thing I've ever wanted to do or be.
And she says, perfect. Then what you'll need to do is you'll need to make that symbol out of ceramic. And then we'll need to figure out what we do with it from then on. But my field. So let me look into that for you. Does that sound all right? But you go ahead and go work with the smith on the most powerful configuration you can make for this ceramic. Okay?
I will.
And she says, great. And so she starts turning to the books again, and Lord Ven dismisses you and says, come back after dinner. And I've spoken to your captain, and until this is resolved, you're to report to me every day.
And I'll give like a bow.
Okay. Do you go talk to the smith?
Yeah.
The smith is pacing, and he turns to you as if he's been waiting for you, and he says, finally, what do we do? Did you talk to Lady Ven? Did she know?
I did. We've identified the beast and its particular breed.
Perfect.
We now need to create and craft a piece of metal in the shape of the symbol that I drew out in an effort to contain and banish this thing somehow.
And he says, metal? I thought you used ceramics more than metal.
I do, but they said it has to be something that cannot be broken by the creature. I don't know if it's something we can set into.
Actually, she didn't say that. She didn't say anything about it being broken.
Oh.
She specifically said that it needed to be made out of a material that you had sort of a resonance with.
Okay.
So she was focusing on the ceramic.
Okay.
She sent you to the smith so that he could help you form it in the most powerful version of it, right? So you could imagine. So the smith will talk to you about, like, if it's super tiny, sometimes that can be the most powerful. Sometimes that can be even more powerful than like a wagon wheel size, right? So you're going to him to figure that kind of thing out.
Okay.
He says, all right, so we need to figure out the right form. Now, would you be able to have you ever crafted like a pendant or like, do you think maybe it could be a sort of plate size? And he's like, go get all your clay. We got to make a couple of these. Let's go ahead and get in on this.
And I figure there's probably just like a sealed barrel that I keep out back that I have just wetted that I can cover, and I just bring the whole thing in.
And he says, perfect, okay. And he's got when he's making stuff, he has these really rough sketches that are up on the walls. And the only thing up on the wall right now is that that symbol that you sketched out on the floor. And he says, does that look right?
To my memory, yes.
And he says,
I mean, it's all come back much clearer now.
Okay, and he says, all right, take a piece of clay and do whatever your hands let you do. Now I'm going to try and work this out in like a larger format. Go ahead. And so for a while, I think you and the smith will go back and forth on making this. And I think you'd probably be relieved to realize that you can actually make the symbol. It's not making you make the Nothic again. It's like your brain has given you the message you needed. And now you can make this symbol. The smith is very good at making the symbol as long as it's a very large format. So he makes one that's like about 1.5 feet tall, around, it's a round piece and it's very thin. And he says we could fire this and then put straps on the back, make it a shield. Ceramic shields are a thing because we can harden it. And he's made another one that's sort of like a 3D, but again, it's like 1.5 feet tall. And he says we could make a dozen of these and set them in a circle. What have you got?
And with what I had been working on, I probably had just basically made a representation of it, just about about the size of a small plate.
Mm-hmm.
That I had maybe kind of put a handhold in,
Mm-hmm.
almost like like kind of like if you think about uh, remember Predator, the
I've
disc weapon it had, where it had the finger holes.
I've never seen Predator.
It,
Hang on, I'll look it up.
uh, I forget what the weapon is called, but it's basically a disc that has holes you can put your fingers in, and it's just sharpened around the edges.
Oh, I see it. Yep, I got it.
So basically, just probably a ceramic version of just like a blade that has that symbol in it.
Perfect. Okay. And he says, "Oh, that's good. You know what else is good with aberrations and stuff is fire. So let's figure out a way that that can hold a heat source." So he works with you to modify it so that it's got like a little pocket in the center that'll hold a coal, and once it's fired, you can put in it's a little awkward because it's got to be pretty thick, and then it'll warm the clay, not enough to melt it, but enough to make it sort of have he says a taste of fire. He keeps saying a taste of fire. And he says, "All right, go show this to the Vens after dinner." And he keeps checking it with
And
you. He keeps saying, "This is the shape that called to you, right?"
This is what my hands made.
He says, "Yes, yes, we have to rely on that for folks like you and me. Of course, you know it's not the fancy words or anything. It's what our hands can do." And he says, "You must protect your hands, boy. They're your voice." And he keeps saying nonsense like that. He seems very nervous as you're making this. He's not steady and calm at all. He's not flighty or anything, but he it's like he's talking to keep himself from being terrified. So he talks a lot about crafting and how the difference between the cook making a bowl and you making this weapon is that you're crafting a piece of in a way a piece of your soul. This is something that's been imprinted on your soul by an aberration, and in order to get it out, to get the aberration out, you need to combat it with that symbol, and the only way you'd be able to do that is by making something with your own hands. And he just keeps talking about like how fortunate they are that you are a crafter. Heaven help a scholar who comes to face this. And he starts muttering things like, "What are you going to do? Fight it with words?" And he just starts like muttering about that kind of thing. And so he gestures you out the door around dinner time. And you gonna head up to the Vens rather?
Yeah, I'll stop by and get some food, and then
Yeah,
head up.
the cook will look at you and say, take this," and it's like another tray of food, and he's like, "Oh, sit, eat," and he gives you like he makes a plate for you right there in the kitchen, and he looks at the thing you've made, and we'll say that you've had time to harden it, and so it's ready. And he says, "Is that it? Is that what's gonna end this?"
I hope.
And he
It's
says,
what my hands made. This is what I'll use.
and the cook says, the thing, making something with your own hands is important, if I understand what's happening. So, good luck to you. And he sends you up with that tray. Lord Ven opens the door again. And he says, "Come in, come in. Show us what you've made." And Lady Ven takes it from you, and like, may I? And she inspects it from every angle.
It.
She takes a piece of paper and she runs it along the edge, and it slices right through the paper. She looks at the kind of pocket and she says, "What's this? What's this part in the middle? What is this for?" And it's the bit where you were supposed to put the coal in.
The smithy just insisted that it just have a kiss of fire to it, just a touch of fire, so we have a place to insert a coal.
And she
and
says,
he seemed driven to it. So
she says, "That's brilliant. Of course. Why didn't I?" And she starts to bustle around and look through drawers, and she says, "What do we need? We need thyme and rosemary. Yes, thyme and rosemary. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it?" So she's puttering around, and she actually finds some dried branches of thyme and rosemary. And she bustles back over to you and she says, what we're going to do is we're going to crumble some of this in that pocket, and then you're going to put the coal in it, and the coal will burn the thyme and the rosemary. Oh, this is perfect. You're basically holding a banishment tool. It's amazing. You'll be able to slice into it. That'll breach its defenses, and then the fire will help you get in there. The touch of fire and the rosemary and the thyme will help contain it. And this symbol, because you're doing all of this combined in a symbol that you've made yourself. Oh, the power is amazing. So she gets really excited about it. I will call this a. We'll call it a hand axe because it's got a sharp edge and you hold it in your hand. But it's a fire weapon, so the damage it will do is a +1 fire damage. And it's the kind of weapon that only you can really use it, because this is yours. And this symbol will become, like, in 50 years, if you ever settle down and have a your own heraldic system created, the symbol becomes part of you. It becomes something that you work into quite a few of your ceramic makings, and this weapon itself you keep and you use quite a bit. Does that sound all right?
Mm-hmm.
We're getting close to the end of the time, and I forgot to mention this earlier. Sometimes the stories I tell for these don't have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So I'm just sort of going to hand wave the wrap up. I think what will end up happening is the Nothic does come for you one evening, and let's say it takes a week or two. You keep having these dreams; they become more and more clear. You report directly to Lord Vane every morning. He has you stand guard in the family rooms. As the dreams become more and more clear, they set you in. They set you up in a location where no one else will get hurt. And he frets over this. He wants to put 100 men with you, and his wife says that'll only get 100 men killed, and Gane has to be the one to face it himself, and he has to face it with something he's made in his own hands, and he's the best set up for it. And we'll say you face off the Nothic, and you get into a fight of the ages. You have to use every skill and every fighting skill in your book, and there are a couple of blows to the weapon in your hand that should have shattered it. I mean, it's ceramic, but but it's still breakable if you hit it the right way, and it doesn't. It's almost as if any time the Nothic touches it, it is burned, which is odd for an aberration. And you do finally slice into it, and you've got that mixture of burning thyme and rosemary is you're sort of weaving in and around, so you're sort of in a misty cloud of this thyme and rosemary, which is making it hard for the aberration to breathe. And as you're doing this dance and you're using a weapon made out of ceramic, you finally feel as if all of your pieces have snapped together. That this is your calling. Is that you were always meant to fight with these kinds of tools. And because I kind of like the idea of there being a fighter whose weapons are all made out of ceramics. I think that's kind of a neat idea, and they work the best for you. If somebody handles them and tries to fight with them, they shatter and things like that. I think that's kind of neat. You end up being sort of like an earth mage in a lot of ways. And I think you defeat the thing. I think you cut across its chest, and the symbol on the ceramic disc glows. And the light drains from the Nothic's eyes and into the symbol, and then the symbol goes from like that sickly green color to a nice cherry red of heat from that coal, and like it turns from the sickly green to the cherry red as the heat burns it through that symbol, and the Nothic just falls to ashes that sort of singe the cobblestones, and you've defeated it. I think that's how I'll wrap that up. Does that sound all right? Any details you want to change there?
No, I love it.
Does it sound okay to have a fighter that makes ceramic weapons and is known across the land as a ceramic weapon maker.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out a way to tie the fighter. He's really good at fighting, but he loves, but his passion is for ceramics. And you handed it right to me when you were like, he makes the disc from the Predator. And I was like, well, there you go. He made a weapon out of it, so it's perfect. That's exactly what we'll do with him. It's absolutely perfect. I like that. All right. So we're gonna wrap up. I really like this character. I think you could really do something neat with him within a campaign. I like the backstory we've created together. Now, remember, if you ever
Mm-hmm.
want to use this and you want to change it, just do whatever you want. This is your character, but I like the idea of there being somebody who creates these ceramic weapons in Azinlia and that world that I'm using. I wonder if if this is, ages in the past and your weapons are now like collectibles and inherited pieces and never taken down off the wall or anything, or if this is modern day and you actually this character actually bumps into one of the groups I've got and somebody buys a piece off you. Like that could be kind of interesting as well. Yeah, there's a lot of possibilities here. You could go in a lot of different directions with it. Does he keep making the figurines? Does he figure out a way to combine is like the geometry and the abstract symbols he was using? Is there a power in that? Does he stupefy sorcerers all over who try to study him and they don't understand why for them it's a ceramic plate and for you it's a weapon, like that kind of thing? There's a bunch of different stories you could tell here. But what do you think? You started this with you wanted to improv more of this. Did this go in an interesting direction for you?
Yeah, I very much enjoyed this.
Awesome. Okay. Well, yeah. Any questions or anything about what we just did, or?
No.
All right. Well, I think we will wrap it up by sharing with Stream where they can find us. If you're happy, if you're comfortable sharing that, is there anywhere where people could reach out to you? Are you going to be streaming at all this week? Anything you want to share?
I'm actually fundraising to get a better computer for streaming. So
Great.
at some point in the future, I hope to be streaming like maybe a little bit of retro gaming and chat. Mostly just me chatting and doing art.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I think that sounds great.
I'm mostly like active on Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
at MC_etching. I've got at Punklenix is my Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's about all. That's about all I do. My Etsy store,
Mm-hmm.
etsy.com/shop/MC etching.
Yeah, I do really love the work that you do. All of the glasses I have for you in regular rotation. It's good solid work, and the etching is gorgeous. I've ordered some glasses from other artists, and the etching just doesn't. It's almost like it wears away, and I haven't had that problem at all with yours. Or it weakens the glass. I've broken a couple of those, and I don't have that problems with yours at all. So, yeah, I highly recommend his Etsy shop for sure.
There's a fine line with it's just it's controlled scratching, but it's like you do it a little too long, and it eats right through it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how you do any of that. I think that's amazing. I really liked how Gane came at this from a ceramics side. It would have been really easy for you to do something with glass or whatever, but ceramics has just a different edge, and I love that you can like do stuff with your hands because that's how I see you as somebody that works a lot with their hands, and so it's that artisan feel to something more traditional like a fighter was. I just love that you took it in that direction. I really like these storytelling things because people keep bringing characters, and every single one of you has brought something where they're like, I never have played this, or I never would have thought about this, and we just go off in these wild, non-traditional D&D directions, and it's fantastic. So I think that's really fun. Sorry, I got off topic. Anyway, anywhere else they can find you? Or are you good?
No, that's about it.
Okay. And stream. So you know me, like Seven Spoon. I believe we will be playing Treasure Tuesday on Tuesday. I'm not positive. My streaming schedule is going to be a little wonky for the next month or so because we're moving soon. So there's a lot that goes into that. You can also find me at I believe we'll be doing Broken Bane next Saturday. I'm gonna put together a Dungeons and Doggos in the next week or two, so you should see that. Should be streamed, and then I'm one of the moderators in the Game to Grow Discord server. So go ahead and pop over there if you've got any questions about Game to Grow. I'm happy to answer that. And I had 2 panels in PAX Online this past week. So when the VODs are up, I did one on session 0, and I was part of one called Not Your Therapist. So about how to run a community without being their therapist, because that comes up quite a bit. So yeah, you can find me on Twitter at like7spoon. You can find Nyx here at MC_etching. And if anybody needs anything, let us know. We'll say goodbye, stream. Bye, stream.